The Bahama Islands are in the Atlantic Ocean, scattered over 100,000 square miles. The islands, as a group, form a sort of arc stretching 750 miles, from 50 miles east of West Palm Beach, southeastward to within 50 miles of Cuba and Haiti. There are 700 actual islands. The second largest of these is Abaco. It is located in the northeastern Bahamas. Abaco is ringed here in blue. Unlike the usual Bahamian tourist spots of Nassau and Freeport, Abaco is large and over 100 miles long. It has miles of empty beaches and scattered isolated settlements of simple living, industrious people. On this map of Abaco, we note in the central area Marsh Harbor, the largest settlement, and Man of War Key, about 2 miles east of Marsh Harbor. This aerial view shows Man of War Key from the south. The sandy beach running the length of the island faces the Atlantic Ocean. The protected harbor and the small key on the left face the west toward the mainland of Abaco. In the Bahamas, the word key is spelled C-A-Y and pronounced key. The keys surrounding an island are named for that island and are part of that island group. So, Man of War is part of Abaco. The next 4 slides are air views of Man of War Key from different directions. The Abaco Island group, as has been stated, is rather unlike the rest of the Bahamas. It is isolated in geographical position, in social attitudes, and in political ideas. The reasons for this isolation stem from the origins of the people themselves. They are the descendants of loyalists who left the American colonies after the Revolutionary War. They were, and wished to remain, loyal British subjects. These loyalists were given land grants by the King of England on the island of Abaco. Abaco was largely unexplored and unsettled. By putting loyalists there, it helped England to people this vast empty area. The loyalists came during the early 1780s from New England, New York, Virginia, the Carolinas, and East Florida. Those from the South attempted plantation life with farming. Many did not succeed. Some of the older people went to England or Canada, but many of their children remained and married the children of loyalists from New England and the Carolinas, who were originally boat builders and seafaring people. One such loyalist was a man from New England named Benjamin Archer. His brother John remained in the States, loyal to the new American country. But Benjamin came with his family to Abaco. He was given a land grant at Marsh Harbor and bought from the British governors Smith and Dunmore 60 acres at Man of War and 60 acres at Great Cistern. These 2 tracts of land were given to his 2 daughters, Helena and Rebecca. Helena, on the occasion of her marriage to Benjamin Albury, received from her father the 60 acres on Man of War. Helena and Benjamin Albury had 12 children, each of whom in time had large families of children and grandchildren. The island now has over 300 residents, most of whom have the surname of Albury, and are the descendants of Helena and Benjamin. Most of the natives on Man of War today live around or near the harbor. Boat building, repairing, supplying, serving tourism in one way or another employs everyone on the island. To the left in this slide is located Albury's dock, where twice daily Albury's ferry provides the link with the outside world. Several shops provide natives, tourists, and visiting boatmen with all that is necessary for a simple life. Twice as many visitors are on the boats in the harbor as there are in the tourist cottages on land. These visiting boatmen come on all kinds of boats, from the very simple to the extremely elaborate. Many of the more affluent visitors have a vacation home on the shore and a boat at anchor in the harbor. These visitors come from as far away as Canada, Texas, South America. The writer has noted the presence of boats from Chicago, which had to travel the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway to reach Abaco. More than a few Americans have sold their U.S. homes and are living year-round on their boats, returning to the States periodically to retain their United States citizenship and to avoid the payment of Bahamian taxes. The unimposing aqua-colored structure on the right is the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. This is at the head of the dock where the visitor arrives at man of war. Little boats dot the shorelines of the harbor. Even small school children can skillfully handle a boat. Many boats are always observed drawn up onto backyard dry docks for repairs and painting. Scores of private docks jut out into the water. All that has been said of man of war can be said of Marsh Harbor, 2 miles across the water to the west. Marsh Harbor, while being a larger settlement with more diversified employment, still has the ideal location for boat building. A few men still able to build boats, and always dozens of tourists throughout the year. This dry dock at man of war is handling a large 2-masted schooner. Many such boats arrive for this purpose during the course of the year. On the man of war dock, there is a billboard with a road map of the settlement. All of the short roads run east and west from the harbor to the ocean. These roads go over a high ridge which extends north and south the length of the island. One main street skirts the harbor. The other runs parallel 1 block to the east. Behind the billboard may be observed some drying fishing nets. On the billboard is a small write-up on the settlement. Streets on man of war are narrow. There are no cars on the island, but motorcycles and bicycles are numerous. The homes resemble the cottages of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. One nearby settlement is named New Plymouth. The homes are small and neat, with well-kept gardens. The main crossroad at man of war has no need of a traffic light. Most of the homes have no windows or screens. Wooden shutters keep out the cold and insects at night. The clean air, water, and streets are a source of pride to the villagers and delight to the visitors. In the left center of this slide, near the water's edge, the long, low boat building shed of Mr. Basil Sands may be observed. Seen from the road, Basil's shed is large, open, neat, and adequate. On closer observation, a boat in the process of being built can always be found. Further up on the hill, the boat shed of Mr. Morris Albury is located.
Yeah, the loyalists, I believe I think they come over this way themselves somehow. I never can really, I never learned too much about it in the young days. It's pretty hard to remember that thing. But I know my uncle.
What was his name?
It's Joseph, Uncle Joseph and Richard. There was two of them. They were both been. Oh, that was Albury, yeah. That was Uncle Will's daddy and Albert Albury's daddy. And they were building boats when I was a little boy. But I think it was another man built boats here before that, Mr. Fisher. That was Uncle Joe's father-in-law, a man named Fisher, Mr. Fisher. And I think he was the one that started to build boats here.
Well, what did your father and your grandfather do?
Now let's see. I don't think... My daddy, he used to build boats. He used to build boats. But if he didn't build boats, he used to work along with his brothers. And my grandfather, I think they just don't do farm in here, and it seemed to me like they did build a few boats, They had a few boats to go sponging and fishing around in. I think they might have built a few boats at home. Uncle Bill's gone now. He used to know a little bit more about that.
Mr. Morris, too, always has a boat in the process of being built. Next to Morris Albury's boat shed is his home, made up of two connected buildings. From the roof of Morris's home run pipes drawing rainwater from the gutters to the cistern. All men-of-war homes get their water in this way. The water is stored in the cistern and pumped out when needed. A boat builder of the past, a man who was perhaps the most important boat builder, was James Jenkins Roberts. He died in 1973 at the age of 87. Mr. Roberts built the largest three-masted schooners ever made in the Bahamas. Although no blueprints or plans are made for these Bahamian boats, Mr. Roberts attempted to make some. After building his large boats, during his later years, he sent to the U.S. for a correspondence course in drawing, and he sketched from memory the plans for his larger boats. This was a plan of a tugboat built by Mr. Roberts for the Simonette shipyard in Nassau. Dozens of these sketches and plans by the late James Jenkins Roberts are in the possession of his son, Mr. E. Dawson Roberts, a barrister of Nassau. They are, as far as can be learned, the only rather complete sketches of a variation of the Abaco sailing boat. No boat has been made from these plans, as they were drawn as a record after the boats were built. Such is the case with this sketch of a two-masted schooner. This is a half model of Mr. Roberts' boat, the Abaco Bahamas. It was the largest boat ever to be built in the Bahamas. It was designed and built by Mr. Roberts at Hopetown, Abaco, in 1921. Its length was 157 feet 6 inches, width 35 feet 4 inches, depth 12 feet 8 inches, and it had a net tonnage of 501 tons. The Abaco Bahamas was a three-masted schooner, which usually carried a cargo of 500,000 feet of lumber, or a similar cargo of 500 tons. It worked in the lumber trade from Cuba to Mobile, Alabama, and the west coast of Florida. The Abaco Bahamas was simply a large-sized Abaco sailing dinghy, built along the same lines as the Abaco dinghy is today, but much larger in every way. Its planks, for example, were 4 inches thick. This is a half model of a present-day ferry boat, usually employed to bring passengers and supplies from an out island to its surrounding keys. A half model of a sloop or fishing smack built by James Jenkins Roberts. Another boat builder of the past was Mr. William Albury. William Albury Sr. established the boat building business for his family in 1888. After the senior Mr. Albury's death, his son, William Albury Jr., continued the family boat building. He worked this boatyard until recently. Mr. Albury died at the age of 70 on October 25, 1972. He is shown here with the Obia, one of his smaller boats. MOWC stands for Man of War Key. During his later years, William Albury built the largest boats being built at the time. All of the ferry boats in use around Abaco are from his shipyard. William Albury, or Uncle Will as he was known to all, left a neat, well-stocked shed. All of the lumber has been there since he died, just as he left it, with no one to carry on his work. Uncle Will's dogwood and Madeira ribs are cut and shaped, waiting to be made into another Abaco dinghy. His huge clamps are idle, rusting. And the template patterns, handed down from his father and grandfather, are stored under the roof. Uncle Will's ingenuity is here evident in utilizing a tree stump to help a horse support the huge ribs for his next big boat, which never materialized. Another boat builder of the past is Clarence Sands. Clarence, the old gentleman on the right, is 84 years of age. In addition to boat building, Mr. Sands was a sponge fisherman, a sea captain, and a carpenter. He was born at Hopetown, Abaco, on October 16, 1889, and he is the oldest living resident on Man of War Key today. Pictured with Mr. Sands is Norman Albury, the only surviving sailmaker. The oldest living active boat builder is Mr. Basil Sands. He is in his mid-70s. Basil is rather shy. He does not care to pose for a picture, but he does not mind having one snapped while he is working, provided he does not have to stop work.
Well, I didn't know too much of, I guess it's, I guess it started from, I couldn't tell you, I don't know. I learned it from Father about 50 years ago, and my grandfather, I think it was about 100 years ago. But it started in way back before, maybe because way back in the olden days, they used to do the same thing.
Were your family loyalists?
What's that?
You know, the people who came from the States after the Revolutionary War?
No.
Where did the Sands come from?
Well, my mother descended from Granite Key.
What was her name? Was she a Rutherford?
No, she was a Sands.
She was a Sands.
She was a Orby in the big, she married my daddy, which was a Sands.
Mr. Morris Albury, a very active boat builder, is in his 60s. He has applied to the government for his old age pension of $13 a month, but he still keeps on working every day. Mr. Charles Sands, a younger brother of Basil, is in his mid-40s. He is a very speedy boat builder. He completes an Abaco dinghy in about 3 weeks' time, while holding down another job 3 days a week. Charles lives and works at Marsh Harbor. A sign on the main street of Man-of-War directs one to Norman Albury's sail shop. The street leading to it is hardly more than a narrow sidewalk. Norman's sail loft is a small building where he, his wife, and daughter work with canvas. Only Norman makes the sails. His wife Selina and daughter Lois make canvas hats, jackets, and bags for tourists. Norman is 75 years old, but is still a very active man and a skilled sailmaker. In addition to making sails, Norman serves as the unofficial welcoming committee for each ferry boat that arrives.
But the Man-of-War people, that's many of them went for the crawfishing. They went, what was left of them, they went into the boat building industry. They went building boats. And about 1920, I guess it was, around about that. I brought him in, I got in with him and come here to have a boat built. He was from Miami. Joseph K. Lipscomb. His work, what he did was look for oil. He's a man who sallied down to find oil. And he had this big 40-some foot of boat, the whole building. I made the sails, and he went away. And then they keep coming from getting boats built, you know, and keep coming and so. And
Norman is never too busy to stop and talk. Here he explains his templates to a tourist. The sailmaker's tools are on his bench. His carefully made sails have been made for boats from all parts of the Western Hemisphere. This sail is a roller jib of 462 square feet. It is 18 feet wide. Norman's sons, Marcel and Richie, own and run the local ferry. His other sons are engaged in business on the Abaco mainland. So there will be no one to make sails on Man-of-War when Norman is no longer able to do this work. Here, Norman confers with a buddy while a tourist looks on. The colorful canvas items in the shop, including the British flag, were made by Norman's wife and daughter. The Abaco dinghy is shown here. The basic boat, with minor changes, can be built in several ways. This dinghy has a sculling notch in the transom. A sculling oar is manipulated through this hole to propel the boat. This dinghy, with a 4-inch hole cut in the bow cover, will be used with a sail. A sailing dinghy also has an extra piece of pine added to the bottom of the keel to give greater stability. A sailing dinghy also has U-shaped seats in the stern and a tiller for steering. The Abaco dinghy can have an outboard motor attached, but none were built for this purpose during the time of the shooting of this slide series. This 21.5-foot Abaco fishing ketch has a live well or deep well. This one is uncovered. The live well has holes drilled in the bottom. These holes admit seawater into the well. The depth of the water in the well will be the same as the depth of the boat in the sea. When fish or conch are caught, they are kept alive in the live well or deep well. The sponge schooner is no longer built or in use because a blight hit the sponges and the industry died. But this old picture shows an Abaco dinghy of the past. the sponge schooner.
In World War I, about 1914, the chief industry of the Netherlands was sponge fishery. And after the war, they thought there wouldn't be any more sponge fishing. But it turned out that around Christmas time, they got a circular from the sponge broker to say that they could come to Nassau, and by taking a moderate outfit and no advances, you think they could make a trip. So they went and they made a very good winter of sponging. But at the end of the winter, when the summer come in, they sold the sponges because the three-masted schooners were making so much more money. They were getting about $25,000, $25 a thousand for lumber, bringing from Mobile to Cuba and from Jacksonville to Cuba. But they got the three-masted schooners, they went into that, but it wasn't too long after that before the war was over. And when the war was over, everything fell flat. Then some of those three-masted schooners went away, and hurricanes, and some had to be burnt and so on, and things went back there, and that was a depression. That's what they call the depression. And later on, he picked up a little again in the sponging. Then, later, the sponge died. The sponges died. And then, after the sponges died, the crawfish business started up. Mr. Eddie Sawyer from Marsh Harbor, Miss Eileen Taylor's husband, he was the first man that exported the crawfish. He schooner the Remax. She was named the Remax. And she was a Cherokee South. He bought it. And he started running crawfish in that. Then Mr. Rupert Roberts, he built an Irish style first, and he started. And then that picked up to, kept going on, but lately it's got kind of a little dull. But
these woods, cork, Madeira, dogwood, and yellow pine, are found on Abaco, and are the basic woods for framing and parts of the boat that get hard usage, such as the tiller. The woods foreign to Abaco are imported, are usually used for planking. They are Canadian fir, Georgia cypress, North Carolina white cedar, and mahogany from the Philippines and Honduras. Various woods used in certain parts of the boat are listed. Here, Morris Albury locates a Madeira tree in the woods. He clears around the branch he needs. He does not chop down the whole tree unless he has examined it and can use it. The cleared branch seems to be the right shape for a center rib. The root of another Madeira has possibilities. When chopped, the wood is a pink-red color. Chopped Madeira logs dry on the ground. The log is cleaned and planed to get a flat surface. Several parallel slices are made from the same log. Morris examines the opened log. Some wood cannot be used. These 4 nearly identical slices from the same log will make at least 2 complete ribs with extra pieces for floor timber. 2 matching pieces for center ribs. This lumber will make a stem piece. The stem piece must have 1 long end and 1 short, with a rather sharp angle. 2 pieces of floor timber are anticipated from this piece. A cross-cut saw is used for felling the tall Abaco yellow pine. Tools are sharpened on an old grindstone, which must be wet.
This is our old-time grindstone. We grind all the tools on it. And of course, this is a one-man job now. Don't have any help. You grind it down till you feel the one edge brittle, and then you know it's sharp. And then you just touch it a little bit more, and then you're all set.
Morris takes good care of his tools. This round-faced plane is made from native wood and has been handed down in the family. It is used to make a curve on one side of the shutter plank, which should have a slight bow to it.
This is a round-faced plane. Old wooden plane, but this is what we put in the plank. It's wood all but the hand, you see. It's a homemade plane, I'd say, but out of wood. This is a homemade plane out of wood, and it's got the round face. Let's see, the round face, I think it'd be better looking at it right there. Yellow wood.
Like what tree?
Yeah, it's, years ago we'd have these trees in the woods, and they get it and curve it out the shape and put a iron in it where it's cut.
In building a boat, the first piece made is the center frame. Its size determines the width and depth of the boat. The center frame is made of two identical pieces joined at the bottom with a short piece known as floor timber. It is common to each rib. A template for the center frame is lying on the half log. The lower piece is a floor timber already cut. Shown here are the three main template patterns. From left to right, the stem piece, the center frame, the floor timber. The lead bar on the log is a changeable template. Its use will be demonstrated later in the series. Each boat builder has his own set of templates, which have been handed down in his family for generations. As the template wears out or is damaged, the builder uses the old one to trace a new one, and the pattern is passed on. There is a slight difference noted in the curve of the template pattern from family to family. One stem piece is cut from its template. This stem piece is fitted to a keel, which is a long squared piece of native pine if it is available. The native pine is yellow and very hard. Over the stem piece, and bolted both to it and to the keel, is the stem lining. The stem lining piece must be a piece that is curved in such a way that it will fit over the stem piece and the keel. Shown here is a close-up of the stem lining, bolted to the stem and keel in such a way as to join them together. Later, the bottom of the mast will come through the stem lining to the keel between the two lower bolts. This is the completed bow end of the boat. At the opposite end of the keel, a stern piece is added. The stern post is placed off at an angle called a rake. Another piece of wood called deadwood is fitted into the obtuse angle between the keel and the stern post. To the stern post is attached the planked transom. Here Morris shows his template used in cutting the bottom shape of the transom. The completed transom is pegged to the ground on both sides. A plumb line is being hung from the stern to center the standing framework. The plumb line extends down the back and must hang parallel to the center lines of the boat. The transom, shown from the rear, is pegged and plumbed up, and the stern end is completed. Returning to the bow end, the stem lining is chamfered. Morris shows here how a plank will eventually fit into the chamfered place. Next, the center frame, which was previously made, is attached to the keel. It is pegged to the ground on both sides. A plumb line is hung from its center. To the stem lining at the bow end, battens are attached. Battens are thin strips of wood used as temporary framework. The bow end is temporarily braced upright with a support to the wall, and a plumb line is attached. The battens are drawn around the boat from front to back on both sides. The battens are drawn around the center rib and clamped to it. The boat is now assuming its final shape. One notes at this point that the bow, center ribs, and stern are the only determining factors in the final shape of the boat. Each batten is clamped individually to the center rib on both sides. The battens may be adjusted, moved in or out as the builder wishes. Now other ribs are needed. For these, no templates are available. They are fashioned individually to fit the battens in each spot. A lead bar is used for this purpose. It is bent to fit each curve. It is straightened after each use, to be bent to a new shape as needed. A hammer and small piece of wood are used in straightening. The lead bar is placed against the battens to form the shape of each new rib. Then it is placed on a suitable piece of wood and the new rib is cut. The new rib is placed in position on the keel and resting against the battens. This new rib is placed directly behind the stem lining. A close-up of this new rib shows the two rib pieces joined with a piece of floor timber. In the same manner, all of the other ribs are made, each individually to fit correctly into its position against the battens. The ribs toward the front are called bow ribs, and those toward the back are called stern ribs. Ribs are placed along the keel about 10 or 11 inches on center. Then the planking is done. Planking starts at the top, where one batten at a time is removed to make place for a plank. Planking is done from the top down. Note that the wall support and plumb line are still attached, and one batten still remains. The boat is also still pegged to the ground at the center rib. Planking is started from the top down on both sides. The rib tops are not trimmed until planking is completed. After the planks have covered the bend of the ribs, then the planking is done from the bottom up. Shown here is another view of the planking done from the top down and the bottom up. The planking continues until space for only one board is left. This board is called the shutter plank. It acts as the keystone in an arch and holds and tightens all the other planks. Here, dividers are used to measure the space at each rib.
Now, this is the shutter plank. We plank from the top down, and then we plank from the bottom up. And we arrange this shutter plank to be smaller to the bow end. And then we take out the widest. We take out the widest that we spot the frames, you see. Then we take out the widest and we, how do we do it? We get a correct measurement by this. Then we put it on the board. Then we go to the next stage and we do the same. Then we go right on to the hinges and we do that same thing. Then we come back to the saw branches and put it at the side. And then we mark it.
The measurements are transferred to the board and the points are connected. The board is cut along this line with a hand saw. Morris cuts carefully because the shutter plank can make or ruin the boat. This is the space for the shutter plank at the bow end. Here Charles Sands tries the shutter plank in its space. The angle against the stem must be measured. Charles cuts the end of the shutter plank to the desired angle. Below the shutter plank, the screws are alternated or zigzagged because they are attached to double timber, that is, to the rib and the floor timber. Above the shutter plank, the screws are attached in a single line. At the shutter plank, which is made in two sections, the screws are attached in straight lines on both planks. There is double timber behind at this point. The shutter plank is located below the bilge line.
We always prefer putting them in two pieces. See, that's got room to fasten this, and the next one has room to fasten there. Just the same as, see, all the other planks fasten in single timber. When you get down here, you got double timber, well, you still got your good fastenings in there.
The shutter plank must be planed out a bit to give it a slight curve or turn. Charles fits it in carefully. At this point in making a boat, if it is to have a deep well, the well is added. It is attached to the floor timbers and built up within the boat. Here is a close-up of the live well being built. This is a long shot of the same well. When it is completed, the holes will be drilled in the bottom of the well to allow water into the well. Next, a breast hook is made.
Now, you read a picture of that little crooked one, that was a breast hook.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what reason, but the same as this, they call it a breast hook instead of a crooked knee.
The breast hook is placed in the bow end against the stem lining. Note that the breast hook also is made from one solid piece of wood. These short curved pieces have been put aside to make breast hooks and knees. The knee also is made from one piece of wood, but a wider piece. It needs a 90-degree angle or greater. The knee is placed in the rear of the boat. The knee is planed and attached inside both stern corners. Coming to the bow end again, behind the breast hook, a thin strip of wood, known as the cap rail support, is added. The cap rail support is clamped at each rib all along the top inside of the boat. It is attached on both sides. Now, parallel to the cap rail support, but on the outside, the builder puts another strip of wood called the rub streak. He demonstrates the depth and position of the rub streak. On top, across all three, the rub streak, plank, and cap rail support, a flat piece known as the cap rail will later be attached. The transom has overlapping planks that must be trimmed. They are sawed flush with the transom. Still another family template is traced to give the shape of the transom top. The completed transom is ready for the next step. Here is seen the inside of the transom with the knee and cap rail. This cap rail, although complete, has not yet been plugged. Along the inside of the boat, about 7 inches below the cap rail, a narrow strip of wood is attached to each rib. This wood supports the seats and is called the rising. The center seat is placed temporarily on the rising, but it is not permanently attached. The center seat can be removed for convenience in handling cargo or for other reasons. The back seat is notched at the stern piece. An extra piece of wood is used to attach a permanent seat to the rising. The boat is given a final planing inside. The inside is cleaned and scraped. Then a floorboard support is added. The floorboard support is not placed all along the length of the boat, but it is put only where there will be floorboards. These floorboard supports are at the rear of the boat. Here all the needed supports are in place. Then the outer floorboard is shaped. It is attached to the floorboard supports. The center part of the floorboard is made. This center part is made to fit between the two permanent sides and is able to be removed for bailing. It fits together nicely and makes a good level area in the back of the boat. Caulking the cracks is the next step. Caulking cotton is purchased raw in bulk and must be separated. It is twisted into strands. The strands are wound into balls. The caulking cotton is worked into all the seams along the length of the boat. It is pushed into the cracks with a caulking knife. Only the ends of the cotton extend out. All the rest has been pushed into the seams. Along the edges, a wooden mallet made of lignum vitae is used to tap against the tool that pushes in the cotton. Lignum vitae is a very hard wood. Except for the overhanging pieces, one would never know that the cotton has been inserted. After the plank seams have been caulked, they are painted to wet, soak, and spread the cotton. Then the edge pieces are caulked with the tool and mallet. These places are harder to caulk because many are on curves or go against the grain of the wood. The cotton is trimmed and other caulked places are painted. This is a view of a boat before it was caulked. The sunlight showing between the seams indicates how necessary the caulking is to keep out the water. This slide also gives a good picture of a completed rising, the inside rail of the boat. The first coat of paint put on the boat is eventually sanded down. This slide and the next are two views of Charles Sand's completed boat. Charles usually paints the inside instead of staining it. This is a 21.5-foot completed boat by Basil Sands. It is the finished deep well boat that was observed being built in previous slides.
Yeah. I tanked the boat up, just the same as this one now.
Yeah.
And then I started to the bottom and come on up.
How did you fit it in?
I did fit. I fitted it down underneath.
In curved lines of shape?
That's right.
And then you drill the holes in the bottom?
That's right. After it's all done, I drill those in the bottom.
Now what about the top of that?
The top, that is the cover to go on the top. The cover is not honey.
Slides. This smaller deep well boat is for sculling. The larger boat by Basil has a covered storage area at the bow end. The high area at the back can support an outboard motor and an auxiliary, or if the boat is equipped with a sail, the tiller operator can sit on the wide seat. The deep well, or live well, will have a cover on it when in use. This is Morris Albury's completed boat. It will be an Abaco sailing dinghy with a tiller, rudder, and mast. One of the fine details on Morris's boat is the stained transom top and knee. Floorboards are spaced and attached permanently. Stern seats are placed in a U-shape. An open space is left for bailing. Seats placed parallel to sides need additional support. The tiller, made of Madeira wood, can be operated from the back seats. The tiller has been attached to a pine rudder below. Details of plugs in cap rail are seen here. The rounded bow cover fits across the front of the boat. Into the rounded front is cut a 4-inch square hole for the mast. The mast then sets down into a hole that has been cut in the stem lining. The mast and boom for the boat are near the completed boat. A close-up shows the squared end of the mast, narrowed down. The mast is rounded and tapered toward the top. The wide end of the boom has 2 additional pieces added to it to help it swing easily around the mast. The rounding of the mast is done by hand. The mast starts out as a 4x4 beam. Where rounding is desired, a plane is run along the 90-degree corner from the bottom to the top at each of the 4 corners. The plane cuts the corner at a 45-degree angle, resulting in 8 sides and 8 angles the length of the beam. Then the plane is run down each of these 8 angles, resulting in 16 sides and 16 angles. The original 4x4 has now been nearly reduced to a rounded post. A good sanding job rounds the 16 sides and angles into a smooth post for a mast. The boat builders call this changing a 4 square to an 8 square and an 8 square to a 16 square. This is the final picture of Morris Albury's completed Abaco dinghy. Before the writer leaves Man of War, one last slide is taken of the exit from the harbor. The writer, or any visitor, has only one means of leaving the island by public conveyance, riding the Albury ferry. This picture, taken on the ferry, shows part of the back of the ferry boat. This ferry boat, a very large Abaco dinghy, was built by the late William Albury. The last view of the island is seen over the wake of the ferry boat. The end.